Hi guys, I'm the Retro Critic here, and today is a special video where I discuss Star Wars. Today I'll be talking about one of my favorite franchises, and that's Star Wars. So here I'll be talking about my knowledge and my personal experiences with the franchise. I'll be talking about the history of the franchise and my knowledge of the franchise. I experienced Star Wars with the original trilogy when the prequels first came out, and the prequel trilogy watching. And at the time, I grew up watching the prequels when the prequels were a thing. I first saw the prequels when they were a thing. There's a book called Darth Bane Path of Destruction. Darth Bane Path of Destruction first got me into it. I'm a fan of the experience. Now, you see, I'm more of a prequel, original trilogy, expanded universe kind of fan. I'm that kind of fan. So here, I'll talk about my experiences with Star Wars, and my history with the Star Wars franchise, and how I got into Star Wars, and my knowledge of Star Wars. I'll be discussing all that today. I'll be talking about my points of view with Star Wars, and I'll be discussing all that today. Star Wars is similar and a lot like Star Trek, but you know, Star Wars is very similar to Star Trek. I do like to compare it to Star Trek. I think Star Wars would learn a thing from Star Trek compared to Star Trek. I think Star Wars should learn a thing from Star Trek. I think it would improve and learn from Star Trek. Also, I got into Star Wars by watching the VHS tapes, and then I later watched the special editions. And I think those are the ones I saw the most. Now, there's the expanded universe. Now, I'm more of a prequel and an original trilogy and an expanded universe kind of guy. And there's the expanded universe. Now, and there's the expanded universe. I like the expanded universe. The expanded universe expands upon the stories a more graspable gap. It shows that it's a much bigger universe out there. A little grasp of what that universe is like. So I saw the original trilogy on the original VHS tapes, the recent ones. Then I later saw the original trilogy on TV. Then I saw the special editions, the 1997 version. Now, the special editions, these are the ones I saw the most. I saw the 2004 and 6 one mostly. They're the ones that are like, you know, the most available and copied. Now, besides the 1997 version, the 2004 one is the most available one and most copied. I did saw the movies when the prequels came out, but you know, I'm more of a prequel, an original trilogy, and also a expanded universe kind of guy. Now, speaking of the expanded universe is it expands upon the story. The expanded universe basically expands upon characters and the story, and also the expanded universe also continues the story right after post Return of the Jedi. So also after that, the film show a little grasp of that universe and the big universe galaxy. Now, the films show a little gap, grasp what's in the universe is like in a big galaxy. And I think the film showed that little gap in the movies. Now, in the films, it shows a little grasp of what the universe is like in Star Wars, and in the movies, it shows that just how big a galaxy is. Now, in the films, it shows how much of a big universe and galaxy it really is. And I think it shows what the Star Wars universe is really like. And I got into the expanded universe by reading Darth Bane. That's my favorite. Now, I watched Star Wars prequels when they were out. Now, I watched the Star Wars prequels when they first came out, and I grew up around the prequels. I was around when the prequels were a thing. Now, the prequels were not terrible. Okay, the prequels are not terrible. I don't think the prequels are as bad as what people are saying. Here's the thing, the prequels, I'll get to that later. They're not that bad, okay? But let me just move on to the expanded universe. Now, the expanded universe... Let me just move on to the expanded universe. Now, the expanded universe, what I like about it is there's so many origin stories, and I was introduced by a novel called Darth Bane Path of Destruction. Now, Darth Bane Path of Destruction was the first novel that got me more hooked in the expanded universe. What got me more interested in the expanded universe was a novel called Darth Bane Path of Destruction. Now, in Darth Bane Path of Destruction, that was the first novel that got me more interested in the EU. It got me more hooked in the EU. It got me more hooked in the expanded universe. It got me more interested in the expanded universe. I really liked and enjoyed it. And I'll go on. That's my thoughts on it. Now I'll go on, and that's my thoughts on it, and that's all what I have to say. And now I do recommend the original expanded trilogy. Now, what I did not like was when Disney eliminated the original timeline. They created a new canon. And the new canon's pretty inconsistent, pretty off. The original canon was consistent, but this new one's not. Post Return of the Jedi. After Return of the Jedi, it's stories. In the expanded universe covers so much more. Origin story, characters, more goes in. Expanding universe explores so much more in characters than you would go. The expanding universe talks about many origin stories. The expanding universe explores many topics and characters and character stories and character arcs and planets and even species it goes into. The expanding universe, in its original timeline, Disney eliminated the original timeline. They created a new canon. Now, their explanation, though the original timeline was consistent, and it was consistent, their explanation was it was inconsistent with Disney's explanation for eliminating the original timeline was because it was inconsistent, but the problem was the original timeline was consistent. That's the problem, the original canon. So, the new canon, I was open to the new canon, but the new canon's awful. The original canon did so much right. The original canon was so developed, okay? The original canon did so much right. The original canon was so developed that just, why would you eliminate so much material on that? But the new canon, inconsistent itself. Like, I was open to the new canon. I literally was open to the new canon. The new canon is inconsistent. The new canon's awful. The new canon's trash, okay? The new canon's trash. I don't know. I thought they were bringing some materials. I thought they were bringing some material in the new canon. But the new canon is so inconsistent. The new canon is so inconsistent and trash. The new canon's just trash. The new canon is just kind of garbage. The new canon's just garbage, okay? But the new canon's just horrible. Okay, the new canon is just trash, terrible. The new canon is just trash, and so forth. I'm not a big fan of it. It kind of sucks. I recommend the original. It's not great. I recommend the original. The new canon piqued my interest. So, that's my thoughts on Star Wars, and that's my thoughts. That's all I have to say. I recommend you read the Thrawn trilogy, novel or the comic, and it's a great start with the expanding universe. There are many stories, and right after post Return of the Jedi, and a continuation after Return of the Jedi. And there's certain events that take place right after Return of the Jedi in stories. Now, Darth Bane was the Sith who created the Rule of Two. Now, I recommend you read the Thrawn trilogy, novel or comic. The Thrawn trilogy is a good story. It's a good way to start. It's a good start to read. It's get into a big epic adventure and story. And there's a lot of important events that take place right after Return of the Jedi. And in this trilogy, there are a lot of fascinating and interesting characters in these new stories. Now, I think the Thrawn books are a good way to start with the expanding universe. Now, if you want to read it chronologically, take place something literally 4 hours after Return of the Jedi, literally hours after Return of the Jedi, you read Truce of Bascu. Truce of Bascu. Now, there's a truce, and that's why it's called Truce of Bacchia, but in the planet Bacchia, there's a truce with the remnants of the Empire, but it's a good start for the downfall of the Empire, and possibly better negotiation. It's remnants because the Empire spread across the galaxy. But what's even more interesting and fascinating is the fact that this is the beginning of negotiation with the Empire, but also this story shows the beginning and end of the Empire. But hey, I'm just being chronological here. But speaking of chronological, now if you wanted to go way back, in the very beginning of the Star Wars universe, there's an era called Dawn of the Jedi. There's an era called Dawn of the Jedi. Now, in Dawn of the Jedi is interesting, and it marks the beginning of Star Wars, and it marks the origins of the Jedi, and it marks the origin of the Sith, it marks the origins of the Force, how the Force became to be, how the Force became a powerful entity, how the Force became powerful, how the Force made, how the Force was created, and it does have a very interesting origin story of the Jedi and the Sith, and both as a whole and really interesting, and it's real beginning of Star Wars. The real beginning of Star Wars is fascinating. It's very unique with its own kind of origin story. Now, there's the Old Republic era. The Old Republic era is actually a new era, and it's actually also my era. Then there are the Tales of the Jedi comics and the Dawn of the Jedi comics. These are considered to be my favorites. Tales of the Jedi comics and the Dawn of the Jedi comics are considered to be my favorites, and they're the origin story of Star Wars. These are considered to be the origin story of Star Wars. Considered to be in the Dawn of the Jedi era. And I have to say, the Dawn of the Jedi era is a really interesting era in Star Wars. And it's a really fascinating, interesting era in Star Wars. Dawn of the Jedi era is a really interesting era in Star Wars. I'll go on, and I would go and check them out. Now, there are plenty of Star Wars stories out there. Star Wars is also one long continuation of a story. There's plenty of stories out there, but Star Wars is one long continuation of a story. Now there's Disney. Now, I'm not a big fan of Disney. Now there's in this new Disney canon, I'm not a big fan of, and I'll go on by. Now, there's the Old Republic era. The Old Republic era is actually a new era. It's another great era in Star Wars, and it's actually also considered to be my favorite era in Star Wars. Then there are the Tales of the Jedi comics and the Dawn of the Jedi comics. The Tales of the Jedi comics and the Dawn of the Jedi comics are considered to be my favorites, and they're the origin story of Star Wars. These are considered the origin story of Star Wars. To be in the Dawn of the Jedi era. And I have to say, the Dawn of the Jedi era is a really interesting era in Star Wars. And it's a really fascinating, interesting era in Star Wars. And the Dawn of the Jedi era is a really interesting era in Star Wars. And I have to say, the Dawn of the Jedi era is interesting. I'll go on, check them out. Now, there are plenty of Star Wars stories out there, but Star Wars is also a long continuation of a story. Now there's Disney. Now, I'm not a big fan of Disney. In this new Disney canon, I'm not a big fan of, and I'll go on. The new Star Wars trilogy is terrible. The new Star Wars trilogy is shit. The new Disney Star Wars trilogy is terrible. I think the new Disney trilogy is shit. It's just not great. I don't think the prequel hate should have, really treated George Lucas extremely unfairly. And also, I think Disney's really being disrespectful to George Lucas. Disney's not respecting his property. They're not respecting his brand at all. This new Star Wars trilogy is just a slap in the face of the original Star Wars trilogy, and it's not true. It's an insult. Disney is not respecting the franchise. It's a slap in the face of Star Wars. Disney is basically insulting the whole entire Star Wars franchise. Disney, I heard, also got rid of the EU in 2014, which the EU was consistent. Disney claims that the reason why they got rid of the EU was inconsistent, but the truth is, it was not inconsistent, as more research has shown the original canon was consistent. And actually, this new canon I'm looking at, their own canon, is not consistent at all. Here's the thing, I heard that Disney also got rid of the original EU timeline in 2014. Now, the problem was, the original EU was consistent, but Disney said the reasons why they got rid of the original EU was because that it was not consistent. But the truth is, it was consistent. The original EU was consistent, that's the problem. But when I look at Disney's own canon, it doesn't seem it's consistent. When I look at their canon, it's not even consistent at all. I think their new timeline canon is trash. I think their new timeline canon is trash. I think they're garbage and terrible. I think Disney Star Wars and Disney's property is garbage and trash, and I will go on and on. That's kind of how I feel about Disney Star Wars. That's Disney Star Wars, and it's trash, and that's just how I feel, and that's my thoughts on it. And that's my thoughts on it, guys. The Star Wars, I think, was a slap in the face, and I think the trilogy is a slap in the face insult. I think what Disney did was a slap in the face, an insult to the Star Wars franchise, and also and I think the new trilogy was also an insult to. And George Lucas is an underrated director, by the way. I think he's an underrated director. Now I think George Lucas is an underrated director, by the way. Yes, I don't think he isn't all that bad. Yes, he's flawed. Yes, George Lucas made mistakes. And hey, look, George Lucas isn't perfect all the time. We can make mistakes sometimes. But I think his biggest mistake was selling Disney. But I think his biggest mistake was selling Star Wars to Disney. Was selling Star Wars to Disney, I think. George Lucas should not sell his own creation. Disney had a trust. But hey, what are you gonna do? George Lucas thought he could trust with his creation with Disney. They thought they can be respectful to his brand. They thought they can be respectful to his property. Until he finds out and realizes that Disney was basically disrespecting his property all along. And George Lucas later regrets it. Basically admits that he was wrong by selling Disney to Star Wars. And then he realizes that Disney is being completely disrespectful to his Star Wars franchise. And then basically he realizes that he was wrong by selling his Star Wars to Disney. And that's the problem. He doesn't like the direction of Star Wars and how Disney is handling Star Wars. The old canon was a very well-established universe, and it was a very well-established universe in Star Wars. Star Wars, I hope, gets better. The Disney canon is trash and garbage in my view. Disney should have never bought Star Wars in the first place and at least owned them. I don't think Disney should have owned Star Wars. Disney is the problem, and I think they're just an awful company. I don't think Disney does not know what it's doing, and I don't like it in my view. Disney's just screwed up and awful, and I think Disney has a lot of problems. Disney has screwed up Star Wars, and I think they're just an awful company. Disney might improve one day, but I hope Disney takes good care for Star Wars. But still, we don't know what's going to happen next. And what's next for Star Wars? In the future for Star Wars, should have never bought Star Wars in the first place. But I hope Disney takes good care for Star Wars. Star Wars, I hope, gets better. I respect if you like Disney, and that's fine. Star Wars might improve one day. And those are my thoughts on that, guys. And that's all my thoughts on Star Wars. And I'll talk about Star Wars in another video. And guys, I'm Retro Critic, and I'm out. I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Bye. See ya. Have a good one. Bye.